Broadcast is live.
It says we're live. This is happening.
Here we go.
Hi, Mom.
Yes. Greetings.
It's
Yes.
literally just orange juice.
Halloween beer. Stone. Drink by 103120 IPA.
My imported from Munich Hefeweizen.
My half-day-old orange juice, but still chilled.
It's an orange juice day for you.
Fine.
There's nothing better than citric acid.
Oh, how are
Really
you guys
makes the
doing?
mouth spark.
So good.
Good.
I'm so glad that I could recommend something scary for this month.
I'm
Yeah,
glad
dude.
too. I'm in the mood for something creepy. So this is really fun.
Yeah, Bowser has been terrifying me, so I don't know how you... Wait, are we playing the same game? Peach and stuff?
Did
'Cause
you
it-
go back and play Super Mario?
Well, yeah, the cave level sucked. It
Yeah.
terrified me.
Got it. Well,
No,
the
this game has
abbreviation
been-
of Super Mario is close to SOMA. It's like it makes sense, but no.
Soma Mario Brothers.
SOMA Mario.
Yeah.
That part when Bowser turns into a robot and he doesn't know he's a robot.
And
Oh my
chasing you screaming down the hallway.
After this video, if you own a Roomba, throw it out. And now that you know
Goodbye.
what robots are capable of.
There's no way to know that it's not a Womba now.
I don't like it. That was
not
a
You're getting real good at your dad jokes, Justin.
I'm working into it. You wrote on one of the summaries of this channel that it's 3 dads and I was like, oh my goodness, that's happening. We're what, week 25 right now. So we're getting there. We're almost to the 3rd trimester.
going strong, buddy.
Yeah, I say
So
we,
great.
but my wife is doing all the work at this point. So
I know, but how are you doing? That's what matters.
right. Let's make this about me.
That goes so well. Oh man.
But so hey, I just gotta acknowledge this is our first video officially as Videogame Sommelier.
Mm-hmm.
We're live on our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and our Twitch account, all of which we acquired really recently. So it's just, I don't know, exciting.
So shout out to our 0 concurrent viewers.
Oh.
Yes. It's like C-SPAN. It's no different.
But we have 1 viewer right now, so feel free to write a comment and tell us who you are, or if you have any questions about the game as we start talking about it.
Hi, Grandma. I know that's gotta be you.
So, we did do a previous video on SOMA before we had this channel. We posted it on our Facebook page, but Ryan, why don't you just give us a quick, since you are the Videogame Sommelier, why don't you give us a quick explanation as to why this was the selection, the pairing.
This was
for
the
month.
pairing for October because of Halloween. And you gentlemen requested a, how you say, crap your pants game.
That is exactly how I say that, yes.
Yes, a game you could wear in your brown pants.
We have a lot of diapers at our house, so thank God.
And so I recommended Soma. And not because it sounds like Somme. It just happened to be a perfect first game.
Okay.
And you play Simon Jarrett, recently in a car accident, lost his girlfriend, and has some kind of traumatic brain injury. So he goes in for a routine scan. They're mapping his brain, developing a model. They're going to run some tests on it and decide, okay, here's his treatment plan, and he's going to, be healed. That's kind of the idea. And just as soon as that brain scan is done, he wakes up 100 years in the future underwater after the end of the world.
Like you do.
like happens sometimes when you get brain scans.
Yeah, the routine ones.
That's what happens when I get a physical. That's why I don't go to the doctor anymore.
No.
Put a mask over you, drug you, and take you out back. And I'm kidding. No, but it is that is a wild premise, and it is enough to make your head spin just listening to that.
And that's just the beginning, right? Because you're like, okay, so I'm now 100 years in the future. You don't even know that at the beginning. You're just in some weird, creepy room that's depowered. And so you're like messing with things, and there's weird noises, and you have to break glass, and you have to get out into a hallway, and you're just in this strange place. And eventually you realize you're underwater, and eventually you realized, oh, there's no one here. Everyone's dead. Or there's these weird robots that are wandering around. And then, and then you begin to uncover what I think is kind of the first big reveal of the game. And, so everyone knows there are spoilers that we're going to be talking about. But that first reveal we kind of cover in our last video, which is the moment you realize that you yourself are a robot. Boom. And you're looking at your human hands turn into a suit, like a diving suit. And that's not even the last reveal about yourself. And maybe we should just jump into this, because the reveal that happens at the end of Omicron is perhaps or the end of Theta is perhaps way worse.
It was so weird. It was like, oh yeah, that's not even your body. You're not
really a robot, right?
Right.
You're a corpse.
Right.
Do you know how long it took for me to piece that together? Didn't mean to use the word piece together for corpse, because it is literally in pieces when you figure that out. But that was a weird thing to wrap your mind around, that you're playing as a dead guy in a suit, like piecemeal together.
Yeah.
With a chip in someone else's head.
Oh.
And so something that I finally looked up was what in the world SOMA means. And it turns out it's a Greek word for body. And specifically like the physicalness of the body, nothing else about it. No, spirit, no anything like that. And so from the very get-go, it's starting to ask these questions about, what are you? Who are you? What is the body?
Right.
Are they interchangeable? And we dove into that a fair amount in our first video. Then we'll be able to ask more new questions now, because we've gotten further in the game.
We know more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we talked at length about the movie Face Off and the same problems that movie presented to us. So if you want like an hour of Face Off commentary, go back and it is this game hurts your brain, and it hurts in a lot of ways, fun ways, but like to try and piece it together, and also the entire time, right, I'd like to add a little bit more to just, it's not that you're like seeing friendly droids in this underwater realm. They're like twisted, haunted, like terror things that just chase you. And it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
Yeah, exactly. You're not wrong. No, there's helper bots.
Like one, and
pretty much
killed it.
Anything that talks to you freaks out.
One.
I thought, okay, well, I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to discuss this, but that was the only one I could find. I knew there was a bad one around to kill, and I couldn't find it, and I was like, I got to advance.
So you killed the helper bot?
It was like
monster.
It was like 10 minutes out there. I was like, I just want to go to the next place. It's a robot. It's probably going to kill me later anyway.
So this is so interesting, because the game obviously puts you in this BioShock type dilemma now and then, which is that, are you going to kill the robotic, former human consciousness thing because it's freaking out and it's a monster, or are you going to let it be, or are you going to, let it run its own life, even if it's a horror or whatever. And you're faced with that choice over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting about that very moment we were just talking about with the helper bot, the helper bot doesn't talk. It just, beep, 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 beep. It's not sentient at all. There's no consciousness attached to it. But you have an affinity toward it like you would a dog. And the other robot in that same area is like a consciousness. It's a former crew member that's now in this weird, twisted mental state. And it freaks out when you attack it. But because it's the monster, right? The monster, you're inclined to kill it and not the,
It's like
the Roomba, basically the sea Roomba.
It feels like even though the ocean Roomba can't talk, it has actively helped you. Like it literally helps you. Like it follows you around, opens doors you can't open, and so in that you attribute a consciousness to it. Like if it knows to help me or program me, then like there's got to be some level of goodness, or like that's what you feel towards it.
Goodness.
The other one though is just this like, I don't know. I was ready to beat that thing, but the problem was I couldn't find it. So I was walking around with this like zapper gun, which like, why can't I carry this gun the whole game? My word. And anyway,
I know he throws it to the ground after he
I know.
uses
I'm like,
it.
don't throw it.
Come on,
Like, do you
Jarrett.
not remember the whole last like building we almost got murdered in? Anyway, I got to the point where I was just frustrated because I wanted to advance in the game, and I was like, this robot is not going to follow me, is my guess. So I felt bad, but the hard part is, it sounds like neither of you killed the Roomba.
It's followed me the rest of the game.
Oh.
I reached the secret areas.
Right. I've trained it. It can jump. It can go to the bathroom in the corner.
It barks at me now.
Right. No, the hard part was when you shoot that thing, it takes hit it, whatever. It takes like 4 tries, and it is like panicking. It's like, like smoking, and you feel
so
bad. You literally feel bad. But at the end of it, I was like, all right, give me the USB drive. Let's roll. Like I felt bad, but I was so frustrated because I had been stuck outside this like place for so long. I also had a lot of pent up like terror that was like harboring in that.
Right.
It's like the companion cube all over again.
It is. It's a companion cube.
It really is.
Though those are sentient.
I know. And I destroyed it faster than any test subject in the history of it.
Oh, gosh. Well, it reminded me of how in our culture, people get more upset at like the mistreatment of a dog than they do
100%.
over a person.
Yeah. A dog dies in a movie and people freak out. People die in movies all the time and they don't bat an eye.
There's a website dedicated to does the dog die?
Oh, man.
And it's this very kind of idea that like, well, people can be monsters, but dogs can't really be monsters. I mean, you've got some, monster dogs, but
dogs.
Generally you're looking at, pets. Pets are not monsters.
Yeah. And then even the dogs that become monsters, you assume that's because of the monstrous acts of one of their owners, not that like this dog was born evil or something like that.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, so the game, it's just an example of how this game like blurs the lines between what we think of as human and all of the stages kind of before and after that, which is really genius about it, because then it puts you in this place of adjudicating whether this creature should live or die. And I will say, we should all just kind of say like the choices we made in this, because I think every time I put the creature down, right, I turn the robot off.
I think
the big decision, the big one, is what happens at the end of Omicron, right before you board that elevator into the abyss, right? That's as far as we played, and it involves the most tense decision to date, which is horrible.
On both ends. And so you're really trying to choose the lesser of two evils in many ways.
So to describe this scenario for our listeners, right? For our listener.
I think it was my mom, and I think we said some things that freaked her out.
Hey, did she?
I don't think she's here anymore. We're back to 0. But
Bye,
she loved us. She gave us a heart before she left.
She didn't want to hear about Face Off. I have so much to say. No.
So I also have a lot to say about Face Off. So we'll figure out a time for that.
So you literally are a pair of binoculars with some kind of microchip scan of your brain attached to a stick that is thrust into the spinal column of a corpse. And that's and even more weird is that your character is a male, right, or like a formerly male brain that has now been scanned and is animating a female corpse.
And then a second female corpse.
Yeah.
And then you get to this point of the game where you have to go into the abyss, and the only way to do that is to get into a bigger suit. And the only way to get into the bigger suit is to transfer your consciousness, your brain scan from your, equipment electronically into the other. And so you're literally looking at a corpse in a body that's another woman, and you find the different pieces and you like make your new, body, and you thrust in the spinal column, and then, through the magic of video games, you're transported into the other body. And then horrifically, the first thing you hear once the scan is complete is, hey, wait, didn't something go wrong? I'm still here. Wasn't there supposed to be something that happened? And it's your voice coming from the other room. And that's your former body who you've been playing this entire game as. And of course, one of the big kind of central questions of this game is how we make sense of the fact that there's now a copy of you, and how we understand personal identity in light of the fact that there's now two conscious individuals with the same set of memories and the same internal structure of their neurons that are now living simultaneously side by side, but would say that they're not inhabiting each other's bodies, right? They're different from each other.
Have you ever seen the movie Moon with Sam Rockwell?
Yeah.
I thought about that movie. That's one of my favorite movies. And for anybody who has not seen Moon, I would urge you to watch it. But it presents a similar issue, and basically I don't know. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen Moon. It's a big one, but. The concept is this guy is working solo on the moon, and he's getting really sick and ill, and then he finds anyway, you learn there are other clones of this man's body, and that people have sent multiple clones that will wake up as the prior one dies out, but they wake up, two of them at the same time, and you realize it's a copy of this guy who was like way back on Earth. But each copy is its own person. And it's really funny because when I played Soma in this particular part, they transfer your brain, the lady Catherine does, to this new body. And my default assumption was, I'm just going to be like cut and paste, right? I'm just going to zip from one body to the other. It literally never occurred to me it was copy paste, and the other one stays. And by the way, the other one is still having a human experience, if you will, right? So that you just happen to be playing from the perspective of the new one. And I think he literally even brings that up in a conversation going down the elevator. Like, I'm lucky to be that one, but what about the other guy, right? And it's such an interesting thought. I mean, we don't really have those moments now, but like the ethics of cloning could even come into play, right? Like if we're learning to make copies of, rats or creatures or people and, robots and sentient experiences and human experiences, it really starts to beg the question of, what makes a human experience, right? What
Yeah.
makes a human experience, especially for a robot in this game? So where does the morality start to come into play? Because these are robots. They're not people, but they are, right? It's weird. It's a gray area. There's no black and white line on this.
Yeah,
And
because go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, I feel like an easy answer would be just to not do it. Right? Don't copy paste
Cut the
the
cord.
person.
Don't do it.
But then, our character is in a situation where he didn't know that he was doing that, and then is
Right.
faced with the decision. Okay, it's happened. So what does this mean now? It's weird.
Yeah.
And it's hard because in my mind, I can take a step back and say, okay, it's a robot. It's not a living, breathing thing. And so as I'm looking at the former version of me who's in like a stasis mode, right? They like put him to sleep, I guess it seemed like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So to me in that moment, it's no different than like, Suri, like it's just, this is a robot here. And that was sort of the, like, I don't know, mask I put on to like try and deal with the situation. I was like, it's a robot, but like,
It's not real. It's only a story.
right. But I mean, here I was 30 seconds prior sitting down in that chair, like with that
Being
brain.
that person, yeah.
Right.
The magic of video games. Yeah.
It is a crazy thought, right? So make it more tangible, make it more applicable to us today. Say like you literally could transfer yourself into another human body, and then you look over and like you're still also there, right? You literally like form a copy of yourself. Now think about the morality of that decision, right? It's crazy.
The huge, I think, moral dimension of this has to do with how they're using these copies as tools. And it was one thing when you sat down for the brain scan and they were kind of using that scan to model how to conduct your therapy, and then that brain scan was going to get deleted or something, and then you find an audio log later that says it shows the aftermath of what happened when they tried to do that therapy and it failed. And Simon now in his first life as a human being back in Toronto dies, but on his deathbed he gives permission for the use of the brain scan in the development of basically artificial intelligence.
Right.
And this forms the template by which you come into being now 100 years later. So in some ways his decision, he wouldn't have known this at the time, but he creates the hell in which he's then reborn.
Yeah.
And the use of artificial intelligence as well, as you said, Jimmy, Suri, right? It's a tool for humans to use, but there's no thought to its rights or its its conscious experience. And in the case of Suri, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It's algorithms running mechanical processes in a computer, which seems different than a conscious experience. And but I think the only way we can say that is if we say there's some immaterial component to us, like there's our mental phenomenological experiences. Those are things that are not neurons. They're feelings, and those feelings, emotions. They have qualities that say have representation in our body, but are not our body. Just as I would say, okay, well, me being me does seem to endure beyond the cells themselves and in their collection. If I were to lose all of my memories and like I got into a traumatic brain injury or something, I would still be me, even though my memories will have been somehow reset or unavailable to me.
Yeah.
And I might not know that, but it would still be objectively the case. And that's, I think there's just, it's hard to wrestle with a game that I think takes the total materialistic approach that, okay, we're just going to copy all the same, functions, and then we're going to birth a new person like ex nihilo here.
Yeah.
With your same memories. And that's really the dilemma it's wrestling with. Whether or not it's possible, we can't say. But if it is, we do have an issue, right?
For sure. Yeah, it's and it's funny because you are faced with that multiple times. There's even a point earlier, and I forget where, but you basically reactivate someone else's brain scan, and you like trick the person into giving you the information you need, and then she says you can either like wipe the info or let them be. And my thought is, why not stick it in my back pocket and take the dude with me if we're going to go to the arc or whatever? But
with the zap stick, we need to keep collecting things.
Dude, I just, they give you everything but a weapon. Like in the game where you need it the most. Sorry, hit my mic. It's just, but it's almost in my mind. So for the record, in the main situation we're talking about where we clone ourselves, I did wipe the guy. I shut it down because in my mind I was like, that's a mercy kill. If I'm that guy sitting in the chair, I don't want to be left alone here. Just like nuke me out, man.
Put him out of his misery.
Like, sure enough, if I'm left alone with those freaking things running those halls chasing you, just straight up kill me out. There's no way. So that was, but then the morality comes into play of, you think of other situations beyond just cloning, like, somebody who's terminally ill. Like you think about all these things, and it's tough to wrestle with that. And it's amazing that like in that split moment where you realize, oh shoot, I've been cloned and that's still like a person. And now I have to make a really horrible decision. And I love that the game doesn't shy away from it. So irregardless of what you choose to do, like you have a really honest, emotional conversation with Catherine, the like robot lady you're talking to, down the elevator. And it's pretty intense. And it's also interesting that you find yourself having strong emotions as Simon, which is another quality that just pulls the humanity back into being a robot.
Yeah.
Like, your character experiences emotions. He experiences all the thoughts you and I would have if you woke up in an underwater lab. Like you have no idea. Literally, you don't know you're a robot for like, I don't know, half an hour, however long it takes till you reach that revelation. So that just tells you how much of a human experience they give these things.
Yeah.
And so at that moment where you're faced with that decision to, either wipe the memory, shut him down, or just leave him be and he'll wake up eventually, I thought about it for a while and I ended up just letting him be. But I'm wondering if that was, for myself, right? To like make myself feel better about he's still alive. And if it wasn't in his best interest, because again, he is the guy that just sat down in a chair to get his memory wiped to go with Catherine to the abyss. And he will never get to do that now. He will wake up alone with no suits, no way to escape, and
no hope.
Now he's gonna die of natural or unnatural causes at some point.
Way to go, Justin.
I know. So it just leaves you with two really horrible options. So Ryan, you're the tiebreaker here, man. What did you do?
Yeah, I totally killed him.
It wasn't even a second thought.
No, I did not think about it.
But it is funny. Like my thought is to think about that though for a moment, because Justin, that was the exact reason I did kill him. Was if that like he sits down and he's like, wait, what's happening? Wakes up again.
Yeah.
Because he's already done it once, and he's like, "Oh my god, now I really am alone." Like Catherine's not here. That's like a double 1-2 punch of just destroying hope.
And
it's
so,
like that felt horrible to do to a person because like there is no way out after that. So, or seemingly, I don't know.
So, like, I guess part of the question is wiping him any different than what we did with the computer program? Was it like Jason?
Brandon Wong.
Brandon? Yeah.
Yeah. Or Brandon Wan. Yeah.
Where he starts to get anxious and we shut it down, you know?
Right.
We did that 10 different times. So is there
You
any
did it
difference?
10 times. I did it like 20 or 30 times because I couldn't figure it out.
It took me forever. That dude kept getting so pissed.
Where did I put him one time? The beach. He's like,
Yes.
I'm not at the beach. So yeah, because it's this materialistic question, right? Like, if you're just ones and zeros, what's the value? Is it worth much? Is it just a computer program? Yeah.
I kept shutting things down because I was like, this is a freak show.
Right.
Yeah, no, so this is not a world you want to be alive in.
Yeah, I'm looking at it all, but it's not even just the world, but it's like the thing. It's like, no, brain scans and neurons and robots shouldn't mix.
There's one robot that seemed really nice that was on the ground outside of one of the stations.
Oh, yeah, outside of Theta, the gal that's like, oh, is this the Ark?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it'll be okay. It'll be okay.
Did you turn her off?
Fine. Yeah. That was the only time I did that because it was just like, I felt so bad for her, and there's no future, right? I killed her too. Future.
Well, I mean, there is a sense that maybe she's delusional and she just lives in her delusion for eternity at the bottom of the ocean.
And that's
it just seems horrible.
Director's edition of The Descent ends.
Yeah.
Where
spoiler
she's
alert.
Still in the cave. She's still in the cave, but in her mind she's in a happy place. And it's a weird moment because to what extent is that a happy ending? One thing I feel
that is a huge issue that we got to come back to it.
Great. And then like just one thing that I wanted to mention at some point was, I think it's the very beginning of the game that starts with this quote, "Reality is that which when you stop believing in it doesn't go away."
Yeah.
And that's Philip K. Dick, and I didn't recognize that name, but he's the guy that was the author of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep that Blade Runner was based off of. So he's spent some time thinking about this world. But I don't know. So what do you guys think about that statement? Reality is that which when you stop believing in it doesn't go away. It kind of reminds me of the correspondence theory of truth, right? That it's like whatever is corresponding with reality, whatever really is in the world is true, and things that we have opinions about or beliefs about that are not corresponding to truth end up not being true. So that kind of butts up against some of popular ways of believing that like everyone's opinion is equally valid, even when things logically conflict with each other. And so it's weird in this game because it doesn't always tell you where certain things land and you just have to make that choice for yourself. Like, is this a person or just a program? Because I have no problem shutting down programs. But yeah, killing a person feels very, very different. And this game's constantly asking, well, is the brain just a machine? Can you transfer that into something else? So yeah, I don't know. What did you guys think of that saying?
I haven't really given a whole lot of thought to it. I remember reading it and it caught my mind. It's like one you kind of got to marinate on. But one of the things that you brought up earlier, Ryan, that is interesting, and it ties into what you just said, Justin, is the brain just a machine? And what makes a person a person? What makes reality reality? And I was sitting there thinking half the time, it's almost the same issue we talked about with the Roomba dog robot helper, right? Like it doesn't talk, but it helps you. And yet in half of these scenarios, you find like literal human bodies that are being kept alive by the WoW program, alien goop stuff. But I don't think they're really there, right? Like it is a human body that is it's like a brain dead person. It's like a vegetable. It's physically there being run, but I don't know how much they're really there. So are they any more or less of a person than you are in a robot suit with a consciousness or seemingly a consciousness? So I don't know. It starts to break my brain some as you toy with how they do these things. I love that the game does that, right? They take humanoid creatures and they make them almost the not people, and then they give you these robotic, like metal things, and you apply humanistic characters to them, and therefore you give them more value. It's funny how even us as players consciously make that decision as we play, right? Like we all, I think, felt some, I don't know, gratitude or caring towards the dog robot, whatever, Roomba dog, whatever it is, more so than you would the corrupt other one, which had a human voice to it. It's amazing the crossroads they give you, and that's the point, I think. Let's make it gray, so you have to try and wade through it. It's a tough call.
Yeah, it's Pandora's box of trolley problems, right? It's just every little thing in between that. So Amy is a great example of an early character you meet who is on life support, and she is very conscious, and she talks to you normally, but she's like, "Help me. It won't let me die. We're not allowed to die." This whole thing.
I forgot about that. Yep, that's right. She was very much there.
But, you can keep her kind of half alive.
I didn't.
Yeah, me neither. But, this is the very question, right? It's the whole, like, do you keep people alive who are vegetables? Or who have very, very limited brain function. Very limited brain function. And we kind of have this sense that, well, it's not much of a life, so maybe we're doing them a favor by, unplugging them from machines that are doing things that their body can no longer do for themselves. And these are actual real world scenarios that we can encounter these same moral dilemmas we're seeing in this game, except that this takes a science fiction dimension and takes the brain and integrates it, at degrees with robotics.
Right.
The problems are no easier. Well, they're harder, of course, to explore in this context. But the same horror exists in our world, and honestly, the same almost sadness that attends to that kind of half or partial type human experience. There's a grief there when we think about people not able to have full possession of their brain, and that grief doesn't know what to do, right? Because we have technologies that potentially could lengthen their life without improving it.
It ties into hope, I think. I think that's a lot of things for me. I can't speak from experience, but if one of my family members was in a coma or was brain dead, I think the only thing I mean, that would be such an incredibly impossible decision to have to make on behalf of another person. But the one thing that I would hold on to that would be a reason to keep them there would be hope that in some miraculous way they would come back or be healed, right? And without that hope, that's just a horrible thought. And that's a similar, I think, theme and tone for this game, right? Is there any hope for your clone if you leave him? Is there any hope for him to escape or have, a worthwhile life that he, has left to live. And so I think and at least for me, I'm finding myself making decisions based on hope, right? Is there hope for me to escape this hell that I'm in on the ark? That's what's driving me forward. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with in real life. What is our hope? What can we find our hope in? What do we look towards? And
so Jimmy, just to interact with that, like, and to bring in Justin's quote, from earlier, you made that up, right, Justin?
The quote. Yeah,
we never heard of that philosopher
on the top of my head. So
yeah, Philip K. Dick is my pen name. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, but it's really this question of what is more important, the ability to interact and perceive reality, or some kind of peace and happiness, because those things are not the same.
Right.
Because you can have an interaction with a fiction that makes you happy.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that we would all say that we believe in a kind of reality that if we encounter it correctly, then we will be happy. And I think that's pure faith.
Yeah.
On all of our parts. There's nothing about the universe that suggests that would be the case. I think this is our theology coming into play. But this is the tension that's revealed in that quote at the beginning of the game, as now you encounter people in various states of both acknowledgement of reality or denial of it, and happiness, or complete beside themselves, terror, and they become monsters. So, we see Amy living in this stasis that she probably wants to be freed from, but there's no hope to actually free her. So would she rather die? I don't know. Is that a choice that she should be making for herself, or is this kind of transcend even her ability to decide something like that? Same thing with the other robots that you encounter. You can give them life, or you could give that gal outside of Theta, right? Think she's on the ark, think she's in the happy place, and is kind of pleasant and okay. And you have the ability to turn her off because she is completely delusional. And it's curious to me that I think on the whole, are making decisions to like disconnect robots from their disreality before like trying to give them, their delusions.
A couple things. We have a couple viewers, so if anyone wants to comment or ask us a question, feel free to do that. But what you're talking about, Rye, hit home with me last night differently, and I totally didn't plan on doing product placement, but I started reading your book, and it made a comment in the first chapter, so I don't think it's a spoiler alert, that there's a destroyed brain. And that's one of the things that you can't make more of. And so I started thinking through this game, and in light of what you were saying, Jimmy, with hope, what is the hopeful future? What would even be the best case scenario in Soma? And I think it is the Ark, because it's either the Ark or everyone gets shut off. Those are really the only solutions. Those are the only outcomes that feel at all positive.
There's a third one.
The third one is the WoW keeps you alive forever.
Yes, that is the third one.
But I mean, the thing is, Amy, she is a human mind and body. That is maybe the only one that you see that is cognizant. There are a couple others that you see that your screen responds as if you're seeing a monster. It's like, I don't like this.
Dude, I responded to everything like I was seeing a monster. If I saw something move, I yelled.
Well, we haven't talked at all about this because in some ways we all want to block it from our memory, but there's the lower levels of Theta.
For the love of
with
everything.
The fleshers.
Okay. I am never touching my router again, after having to go reset that stupid computer and dealing with that thing. Oh my God. Right. If you're going to live in a world where that thing is tormenting you, and I mean, that's like this much worse than dealing with your internet provider anyway.
Like, internet's down. That's fine. I don't need internet anymore.
Exactly.
I'm set.
This game is so genius because the WoW is that third thing. And the WoW is like just pure artificial intelligence, nothing human about it, no brain scans, nothing like that. But it's like a life support intelligence that was meant to make the rooms comfortable. And then after the apocalypse on the surface goes berserk and decides the only thing it can do is like preserve humanity, whatever's left of it, in some kinds of eternal states. And so it begins this like aggressive experimentation where you meet all of these different former people who have been copied or preserved in like weird gelatinous tissue or, mechanical pumps, or copied directly into other robots. And then they are given some semblance of human existence, and the WoW is not human. So the WoW doesn't understand what it means to be human. It's like permutating solutions to humanity surviving the apocalypse.
Right. It's like when there's that one lab you find and you can like zap the rat and it twitches. I feel like the WoW would be like, oh, it's alive.
Yeah.
Great. It's moving. We're set,
That is one solution.
Yeah.
So
I have a question about the arc at some point. So before we're done talking about solutions, I want to talk about the arc.
Well, my question may dovetail into where you want to go with this. So I found it curious as you learn about Catherine developing the arc, which is like, hey, here's a computer. We're going to download our brains on it and fire it out into space. And I found it curious that every time she did a brain scan of somebody, people started like killing themselves.
Yeah.
And so that ties, I think, into the quote, right? Like, to what extent do you accept reality, or do you deal with like a physical human death for peace and happiness? Like, but it's crazy because it's not you. It's not you jumping onto the arc. Like, you're going to end, and then that copy gets to live on. Right. And so it's interesting. I don't know the motives of the people who killed themselves yet. Maybe I don't know if that's ever revealed, but
they do reveal it, but it's very philosophical. It's a emergence theory of consciousness, that your experience of yourself and the fact that you feel like you are yourself and you can control yourself and your own personal identity is really tied to the very unique state of all of the parts of your brain in this very moment. And in a few minutes, your conscious experience will have continued, and more data will be added and accrued to it, and therefore your conscious experience has changed, and you are a new person. You're kind of a new person every time you have a new T marker on the chart. It's very mathematical. And so their idea is, if you copy a brain, there's a very limited window, like even just a moment, when the consciousness is shared between the two.
So you have a transition.
So if you begin the one right as you stop the other, then you have a seamless experience, and there's no two entities that are birthed. It's this kind of idea. It's kind of the Star Trek teleporter idea. We're breaking down you into atoms here, and we're constituting atoms there, and now you're this new thing, and there's no problem. Don't think about the implications of this technology.
Like, shoot, what was that? The Prestige, where he was that got weird, in this kind of a way. And Ryan, what you were just talking about two different experiences, we saw that happen at the end of the part of the game that we played, where we're the same person, totally different experiences. So.
We do a similar thing in the very beginning of the game. You go in for a brain scan, and then you wake up 100 years later. And
Yeah.
your
find
first
out
question
later.
is like,
yeah,
yo, where's the doc?
yeah,
I mean,
So I don't think there's any credibility to this, emergent theory of personal consciousness and identity, because it's very counterintuitive. And so they're basically, one of the crew members, I think it was Mark Sarang or something, like really caught on to this idea and began like preaching it. And then he took his own life, and others accepted this belief. And then they formed a kind of like
it's like a cult.
cult.
Almost.
Yeah. Like a death cult around trying to force themselves onto the ark by eliminating the possibility that they would be left alive. But, the implication for everyone who's sane, right, who doesn't believe the cult, is that, no, these people are killing themselves because they are not the one that was copied or survived, onto the ark. Yeah.
right. So speaking of the Ark, it is depicted in the game as fundamentally heaven,
Right.
where it's a perfect place, wonderful temperature, activities, good people.
They got a
it's
Chili's
just
there, a
a
bowling alley.
wonderful.
Right.
It's a wonderful time. And then we ran into one of the puzzles that really raised a question for me that I thought was so cool because we had to run a beta version of the Ark just to see how it was working, but the Ark memory was overloaded with too many programmed items, and so you had to pare it down. And that feels like a really real kind of a thing that would have. It's a very real constraint. Any solid state machine, any hard drive would have a limited amount of memory, and you'd only be able to put so many different kinds of trees, so many different kinds of flowers,
Right.
so many different kinds of whatever onto it. And so you have to minimize this poor guy's experience to like being on a lake in a boat. Like that's it. Like that's all you're doing.
I have a fear of water, man. What
Right,
the?
this is horrible for him. But it raised the question for me, like the Ark can't be heaven because there has to
It's
be
finite.
something. Yeah, it's finite. There has to be some things they couldn't fit. There has to be, like we were joking about, a glitch in the Ark where you can just get caught in a wall,
Trapped in the
or
world
fall through
geometry.
the ground, reach the edge of the map and see through the programming. So
Fall through the floor.
right. The Ark is up there. How do I get there?
Guys,
Ugh.
didn't someone include a reset switch? Did we save the game?
I didn't download the mod. This is the
There wasn't
worst.
enough space for that feature.
Crap.
Arc
No.
1.0.1. I just need that.
Man, it's so funny that you say that though. I did that whole experience and didn't give it a ton of thought, but yeah, like for this to be heaven, if you will, for these brain scans, sure is limited.
So did you take that survey on that terminal that was next to that puzzle?
I've taken
took
a couple
survey at one point, but I just like didn't even know how to answer it because
So
I haven't experienced it.
There was another survey that was like questioning the crew about the sacrifices they would make to
Yes.
make the Ark possible, and then also like whether they should introduce certain features to the Ark to make it either more or less realistic, and also including like artificial intelligences to have like more people. And so it was very open-ended and weird. And one of the questions was also about mortality. Should we introduce mortality, sickness, or age to the Ark in order to better represent our experience as humans?
Right.
Or do because that will help us stay more true to our humanity? Or do you think we can eliminate those things and still, function as humans? So you answer all these, and then it gives you these percentages to say how many people answered, with different answers. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I'll see that next time I play it, but I'm not convinced there's gonna be a next time.
No, once
Well,
is enough.
if you play in safe mode, right?
Right.
I should have done that. My word, no. You need to play it without that. The experience is
It would have
important.
been
but-
Halloween in safe mode. Come on.
Oh my
Absolutely, no.
word. No, that part of the frustration is like the scare mechanics of it, which is part of the glory of the game. But my word, like
Yeah.
they just know how to stress you out so much through it. But one of the things I find interesting is it feels to me, and I don't know. I mean, by the time you go down the elevator, you're in the abyss, so you're on like the bottom of the the bottom of the bottom of the ocean at this point, where we've played till. But up until that point, it feels like you're progressively getting deeper in the ocean. So each time I'm outside going to a new site, it's a little darker. It's a little darker. It's a little darker. And I think that thematically ties in with the heavy truths that you're uncovering as you go. It's a little darker. It's a little more bleak. There's a little less hope. It's a little more screwed up. And the further you go, the more tormented you feel. And the darker it is just on like all fronts. And that is awesome that I think they did it that way.
Yeah, and it relates too with like the idea of depth in the ocean, where things are very familiar around the surface,
Sure.
but the deeper you go, the more exotic and weird and also unaccountably horrifying and creepy and alien things feel. And it's amazing how that really exists in our world.
Oh man. Well, like literally when the first time I think you realize you're underwater, you walk through this like clear tube and there's like a viewing chair and shoot, the water looks like it's like only 40, the surface looks like it's like 40 feet above you. It's like daylight there. Which makes me wonder how that's still alive after a comet strike. But that being said, it's still light enough that you sort of feel like a sense of familiarity, and then you just continue to work your way down deeper and darker paths, and the monsters get worse.
Yep.
And then is there even an alpha?
Right?
Oh yeah, so exciting. So just to like wrap this, right? I'm really asking this question of what reality is the arc? Because we said earlier it's like a finite reality. It's one that has limitations and walls, and you can come to the end of it. And then the question of, well, are we satisfied with that? Are we happy with that? I mean, we live in a world that has walls and limitations, and our own bodies are constantly limiting us. And that we accept that as like part of what it means to be us. You know, it means to have certain capacities to do things and other capacities to not do things. So, I can speak and I can't fly. And that's what a human is like.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. So the weather.
I can't even jump very high. I'm not good at sports.
Whether the arc, and the arc isn't even made of atoms or like it's not a located experience. It's not a one that stretches through space. It exists conceptually in some kind of computer simulation that somehow computer programs are able to consciously experience. It's not explained.
Well, and if it's built on computers, then it too has a finite life. In theory, computers fail, hard drives fail.
Yeah.
Right.
This thing doesn't have any guarantee of being heaven.
They
right?
talk about it like maybe lasting a couple thousand years, and isn't that worth doing?
But then that still has a finite lifespan. And if the only other option is oblivion, right? It's the eternal off switch or an artificial reality. So I'll start answering your question, right? When you were asking it, the image that came to my mind was the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal Studios.
I was expecting Face Off.
a face off, and
I was
and
ready.
also I want to take his face off. um, uh, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, especially when you visit it in Orlando, is nuts. It is so cool. There are 2 different parks. You know, it's awesome. And in my opinion, my wife's opinion may vary. Um, you can do both of those parks in a day and be done. And so when I think about, an artificial environment that's smaller than our world, because, the Ark is somewhere between our world and the Wizarding World of Harry Potter in size, right? We don't really know, but it's somewhere in between those. Um, the the thought of being in an artificial place that you can become so familiar with that you'll reach its boundaries over and over, right? You'll
Yep.
do the great
Yep.
things over and over until they're no longer great. And so that it's been thinking about this game that helped me understand the ending of a good place.
The Good Place. Yeah.
Yeah. And I won't go into that because that feels like a spoiler alert.
Yeah.
And that
I
feels
haven't
like,
finished that, so
oh,
Ooh.
keep going. It's so great.
yes,
It is so.
it's a
It's
great show.
one of my favorite shows I've ever watched. But I feel like that's just not heaven, right?
Yeah.
It's so much smaller because you think of heaven as being this transcendent, bigger than me place, and the Ark or the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, as cool as they are man-made. They're smaller than me in some ways, right? I mean, it took a team to create both projects. They're both awesome, but they're not transcendent. They're not bigger than humanity.
But I will say, like, I think we're kind of funneled into thinking this through the game, but there's like a totally different way to look at all of this stuff, right? Like, right now they're using brains and robots as tools, and there's this very utilitarian sense. Well, if you're functional, then you're worth something. And if you're not functional, then we can turn you off. Or if you're, inhibiting my progress, I need to destroy you. I wish I had that stick to, zap you. The totally different way of looking at this, and even the Ark, a experience that would be so mind-numbingly boring after 1,000 years, is that you co-occupy a space with other consciousnesses and you can love them.
Right. You experience emotions as this robot, right? Like they give it about as close to perfect of a human experience as possible. So even if you reach the boundaries, you're right, you would have relationships, you would have seemingly feelings, you would have that those are really important things.
Yeah, if you can love, I mean, presumably you can love even in a hellscape, right? And that would be like a horrible, painful for your body, but not for your soul.
Right.
And this is the immaterial part, and really where our faith comes back in, right? Are we really just emergent beings that are totally physical, and that our personhood really is contingent on how much of that physicality is manifest in intelligence and, in action and volition? Or are we beings that love and receive love? Are we beings that find spiritual fulfillment in the giving and receiving of that? I do feel the kind of like friction of being in an Ark that is man-made, that we created and we know the end of. And I think we take for granted how much joy we experience being in a world we did not make.
Yeah.
And always kind of bumping up against the possibility that there's some great discovery, some great love, in fact, that might be revealed in knowing more about this universe that we're in.
Yeah. You said that we're feeling friction. I feel like this game is full of friction. It might be called a frictional game, but
I'm telling you, he's not even third trimester yet. It's gonna get thick.
Oh, it's gonna get bad. But I think about this medium, right? Like this digital medium that we're meeting on right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's artificial, right? I'm talking to a screen, right? I'm not with you guys.
This is a pre-recorded video of myself. I'm in bed downstairs.
And I'm predicting what you're about to say so well. But I mean, so I feel like this is in some ways the ARC experience, right? That I'm interacting with you guys artificially. I have your personalities here, you know, but we're not together in a physical way. And so that was just interesting to think about.
You know, the other half I play on this is, given the world that you're in this game, which I'm gonna call hell. This is not a place.
It's Pathos 2. It's Pathos 2.
Okay, Pathos Hell 2. The Revenge of Pathos is just kicking my butt. No, I mean, like, I say that in the sense of this is not a place I want to stay in. This is not a place I want to be in. This is not a place I like. To me, it's exit or die. Like, I don't want to. This is not a place worth living in. And so, given the parameters of everything you're given in this game, like, the ARC is the only logical solution. And seemingly it is, like, aside from just the logics of it, like, it just seems nice, right? Like, after all you're going through, even though the ARC has limitations and even though it's imperfect, it's better than being chased around by corrupt robots trying to, you know, kill you nonstop. And oh, by the way, you are literally isolated aside from these corrupt beings, except for Catherine. So without her, like, you are just alone in this fear factory. So I would rather go on the ARC at that point, even if it is still not perfect. It's better than this.
But Jimmy, you're right. It's striking when Catherine's in the Omni tool and it's just silent. That's an uncomfortable feeling. I look forward to getting her on a computer just so I can talk to someone. So, like, Ryan, what you're saying, just to have an experience of camaraderie and
the relationship is there. And so you think about that. I'm not kidding. That comes into play for me as you let your clone die. Like, okay, we're going to bounce and you're going to wake up alone in this world. No, thank you. I don't want to be here for that.
And I am thinking of, like, the ARC as, like, the Truman Show. And I feel like the Truman Show is universally condemned as, like, not the best situation. But if he walks outside that wall and outside of it are a bunch of robots that are trying to kill him, you know, it's like, maybe
go back
the
in.
Truman Show's not as bad as we thought it was.
It's a game of relativism.
It's all a matter of perspective.
Yeah. It's an interesting thought for sure.
We bristle at the Truman Show because everyone is being fake and no one is being real. You assume that the people on the ARC are real, but perhaps this gets at that kind of bigger question about how real can you be on the ARC? Can you learn on the ARC? Can you amass more data? Because if you run up against a memory limitation, maybe you can't learn anymore on the ARC.
And that's hard. You don't know how advanced all this stuff is. And so
if your data is actual data, you know, like, we assume that a human being can learn almost an infinite amount, right?
Right.
And, you know, obviously there has to be some kind of limit, but also there's this sense of depth, and that wisdom is more than just the quantity of knowledge, but it's the quality of it. And again, it gets at these immaterial kind of assumptions we bring to who we are as people. And when you abstract from that and become, you know, microchip that has taken your brain scan and turned it into digital data that has footprint space on a hard drive, right? I don't see how this stuff, relates, because eventually you run up against those machine limits. You run up against how much space is on that hard drive, and then even though your program is learning,
corrupted. I mean,
you can't learn, or some kind of virus hits you, and now you're corrupted, and you're not, interacting that way. And so the analog is not perfect. We are not just biological machines. But then if we're not biological machines, what are we? This is a question that I think really stumps a lot of people. And I don't even know where to begin. And I tried to write a whole book about it. Who knows?
Yeah. No, I mean,
it won't look like this in the future.
I mean, if somebody said like, hey, Jimmy, here you are, and we copied you onto a piece of technology, which one's which? I'm like, well, that's easy, right? Like that's made up of software and, computer parts, and it doesn't matter how advanced you make it, it's still a computer program. So by definition, I'm defining life and identity as a human being. So being made up of cells and, muscles and organs and atoms, tissue, all that, how is that different than being made up of mechanical pieces? Well, my first thought is I have a soul, right? There's an immaterial element that differentiates that. So
we do not feel like deterministic creatures.
Sure.
We feel like we not only have choices, but we get to make them.
Mm-hmm. And then we reflect on them, and they can still even, like, that's another thing too, is you think back on them and you can even relive those things. You have emotions that come into play with that. There's just so many things that you can start to peel back. I think that differentiate it. But in this game, you're starting on this slate. I mean, yes, you begin as a human, but when you realize you're a robot, it's like you have to work in the parameters that you're given in the storyline, much like you would as a robot in itself, right?
Yeah.
The best case scenario for you here is the Ark, so go for it.
Yeah, or death.
Or death. Maybe that is the best case.
That's really the question.
And what in the world was in the isolation chamber that I let out? Well, all kinds of things to talk about next time.
Just so much
anxiety.
We've got one more discussion on this around the ending.
In 2 weeks.
2 weeks. We're doing it.
And that shouldn't line up with the presidential debate, right? We lined up with the vice presidential debate tonight on accident. I think the next one...
Didn't realize.
Yeah.
Well, we certainly covered, I think, our topics in more depth.
Yeah. And
do we dare make predictions for what we think will happen?
I want to make predictions.
At the end of the game?
Yeah.
I want to thank Kim, Lynn, Autumn, and Deb for liking our post. So, yeah. And if you're still here, feel free to chirp in with your name or a question or anything, or a prediction. Unless you've already played it, because then you don't get to make
don't
predictions.
Spoil it.
You already know. Okay. I want to fight the WoW. I want to shut the WoW down. So it's like, I know that the rest of the world is dead, right? It's a weird thing because there's no longer going to be a new human. Because very few mind and bodies that are still surviving. Like Amy is on that threshold of a mind and a body that's still surviving. But we haven't seen a male mind and body that's still surviving. We're a male in a female body. So there's no procreation that can happen. And then if procreation happened on the Ark, it would be an AI, right? I mean, because it's not a new computer scan. Like who knows? So
Yeah.
no new life is going to take place in Soma. But there could be a restful state for all the brain scans, for more people than are currently living a pleasant existence right now. So I want to fight the WoW or just pull the plug or whatever. And I want to be given the option to load myself on the Ark or shut down. And then, I mean, I would love to come into contact with the me that I didn't shut down. If that happens, I'd love that. But those are the two really big things. I want to be given the option to be on the Ark or not, and I want to shut down the WoW.
I agree. I think I agree with the WoW for sure. I feel like that's the antagonist in this whole thing, and I am sick of these fleshy meatball, terrifying, screaming skeleton face.
Screaming, unnecessarily screaming.
Oh my gosh. Like, it seriously though, it's not that far off. If you call Comcast for support, you will hear screaming in the background. Like, it's no different.
No different. And you should enunciate differently, just so we can continue to remember how much you hate Siri.
Siri can, yeah, I turned Siri off a long time ago on my phone.
Murderer.
No, she drove me crazy. Anyway, so I hopefully there is a way to shut the WoW down. I would assume that's the natural progression of defeating the bad guy, if you will, the bad thing.
Right.
The Ark has me uncomfortable. The Ark has me very uncomfortable because I quickly learned if I'm to get on that Ark, I'm probably not going to be transferred one way. I was cloned into a new body. So if I go onto the Ark,
it's not
am
you.
I on the Ark or am I on the ocean when it goes? Assuming it happens, assuming I get a choice. Like maybe you get a choice, and if you get a choice, is it a one-way ticket or are you cloning yours? Like that was my first thought as I was going down in the elevator. I was sitting there thinking, oh shoot, this is a copy paste world. And
not a drag and drop world like I thought.
I'm playing with that tension in my head, though. I feel like that's the natural progression of the storyline, is to at least make it to the Ark. So hopefully there is an element of a happy ending, but that kind of terrifies me. So I don't know. I'm cautious about it, but I don't know.
Just make sure that you guys stay for the post-credit sequence.
Okay. Post-credits.
It's helpful to know that sometimes.
Yeah. Nick Fury's going to show up on the bottom of the ocean and
that's right.
Tell us something.
Want to join the Avengers Initiative?
So get me off this.
So you're on the Ark.
Oh man. It's good stuff.
Yep. It's a good game. Yeah. Yep.
And this is just the start. We're going to have a monthly pairing. We have them planned through July. We just haven't announced them yet. So we'll need to figure out a way to either announce that.
Soma 2, Soma 3, Soma 4. No.
Soma bricks in my pants.
We'll have to figure out if we just want to announce that on the second podcast of every month, or if we want to, give a few months out. But hey, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back in 2 weeks to talk about the end of Soma
and Face Off.